So I am here with Robert Stanley, and actually, I've been in touch with him on Skype, I think it is. But I don't know where I saw your work originally, but I heard a recent interview that you did, and I was very impressed by your overall understanding, sort of a deeper look at the cosmos in which we live, and our place there, and so on. And did I get this right? You call it angelology?
Yeah, like demonology, except it's
Angelology.
angelology. Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of the title I put on this as well. And so I don't have your bio because I got times mixed up, but
That's right.
can you talk about your sort of background, how you got into this field, and and what you were doing with your life prior to getting into this field?
Okay. Do you mind if I read my bio? It's very brief.
All
I know
right.
that's weird. Okay, so I've traveled to nearly 60 countries during my lifelong pursuit of modern and ancient mysteries. Over the past 33 years, my quest for unique ideas and information has led me to research and report many controversial topics. My ongoing investigations have been featured on television, radio, print, and of course, the internet. I'm formerly a corporate Honda journalist. My God, just as I said that, my former manager from Honda text me, formerly a corporate journalist for Honda Research and Development, Torrance, California. I'm currently employed as a corporate editor for an international company based in Hong Kong. I'm the author of Close Encounters on Capitol Hill and Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C. I'm also the host of the Unicus Report, and I've served as a correspondent for America's Morning News and America's Radio News Network. And my content, as what people are calling it now, is currently found exclusively on Substack, which is robertstanley.substack.com. Okay, now to answer your question, how in the heck did I get started doing this? I was living in Malibu at the time and having many close encounters back in the 80s. Yeah, it was in the mid to late 80s, up in the mountains there, Santa Monica Mountains near Point Magoo. As I sent you that one link, it's not just ancient ruins up there. There's something to do with UFOs. So that's where I became interested. Actually, they were interested in me, and I couldn't understand why. In fact, I didn't even know who they were. And that obviously, it took me decades to come to the point where I could actually say, oh, if you don't understand angelology, if you're not really researching angelology, you'll never know about who the so-called aliens or extraterrestrials really are. So it's something that I really didn't expect. No, actually, I didn't expect any of this stuff. It was all very surprising to me that I was being followed around by these craft, not knowing who's in them or why they're doing here, what, covertly. That kind of creeped me out, to tell you the truth. I was very shocked more than once. But I realized eventually that I wasn't alone. Obviously, I actually never really felt that way. But in 1990, I met my wife. She had just come back from Peru. She wasn't my wife at the time, but she was working in advertising. She just started Unicus magazine in print because of her contact with extraterrestrials. Started in Venice Beach, and then she went down to Peru and actually had physical contact with them there. And so when she came back, she started the magazine, Unicus, the magazine for Earthbound Extraterrestrials. And when I met her, it was love at first sight. It's not just because she's beautiful. It's because we have this soul connection. And what happened was I took her up to the mountains there in Point Magoo, and we started talking about everything. And I just said, hey, I'd really like to help you with Unicus magazine, because I'm sure that there's something that I can provide it. I have some experience in this, and I'm willing to help you. You don't have to even pay me. I'll just do it. And I'd be more than happy to. And we ended up falling in love. We've been together now over 30 something years. But this is what brought us to, not only us together, and it gave me a path forward professionally as a journalist, I guess, as the editor in this regard. I wasn't expecting this, but it's something that I guess they say this, it's a calling when the universe, life, whatever shows you a path forward. I could have said no, but in the process, I met a lot of people just like you did doing Project Camelot. You meet a lot of people, not just whistleblowers, but people that say things that are pretty unusual, to say the least. And some of it is real. Some of it obviously isn't. Even though the people believe it, it doesn't mean it's true. So I kind of had to sift through all that stuff as editor of Unicus magazine. Eventually it became, we stopped printing it because everybody was going digital. So I learned how to become a webmaster, and that's when I created unicusmagazine.com, and I was putting out a lot of information that way. But as far as the investigation of Washington, D.C., the UFO activity that goes on there covertly, I wasn't expecting that either. That was completely not on my radar, but I got sucked into it. I wrote 2 books about it. That's how I initially became semi-regular on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. Was my first book, and it seemed to go okay, except after the show, I was getting email from people saying, we can't access the photographs on your website. They're gone, of the UFOs over, right there in Washington, D.C. So it was middle of the night. And I figured, I'm a webmaster, no big deal. I'll just upload the photographs again, right? No big deal. Wouldn't work. So the next morning I got up and I called the company that the web hosting service. And I said, hey, I can't get in. What's going on? And they go, well, let us check. And they said, oh, this is really weird. We can't get into that server either now. So I ended up having to move my website to a different server. And that was actually, okay, I should back up. When I first published an article with photographs of the UFOs over the Capitol, one of them had even landed on the Capitol roof in July of 2002. When I published those pictures, I had called the Capitol Police Public Relations Department and asked them some questions. And of course, they asked me a bunch of questions like, who are you? Why are you doing this? Where are you going to publish it, etc. Well, I told them I wasn't trying to hide anything. But the same week that I published that article in print and on the internet, I got visited by a black helicopter. And it wasn't a friendly visit either, by the way. It was scary as hell. I was sitting there in my office like I am now, and suddenly I hear a helicopter, but then it came to the house and was literally flying low circles over the house. And it was so damn loud, it was shaking the entire house. So naturally I go outside to see what's going on. And at that point, it was literally hovering over my driveway. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's my current version. It's a work in progress.
Okay. Well, I don't want to interrupt you there. I just want to
ahead.
bring people's attention to, they can
Sure.
come over here. And are the photographs on here anymore or not?
No, it's right now. Look, I was planning to get off the internet entirely because I know how controlled it is and how they're censoring people, and especially the Restrict Act. They're talking about not just censoring people, but punishing us for just having opinions and putting information out that right, I mean, it's stupid, but that's the game that they want to play. So anyway, I had deleted Unicus magazine off completely, and I wasn't going to do anything until I got a call from Coast to Coast last year, and the producer, I mean, you must know some of the people there. Yeah, you said you've been on them. So Lisa calls me and she's frantic. She says,
yeah, I was hung up on.
yeah. See, that doesn't happen very often. But anyway, Lisa is the producer that books people. She's a nice lady. She called me up and she's frantic. She says, Robert, the guest canceled last minute. We've only got a couple hours, to put this thing together. Could you please come on tonight? And I said, I have zero social media. I don't have any articles. I got nothing. She, we got links to your books on Amazon. I'm like, so well, what are we going to talk about? She goes, you name it. I don't care. She goes, I don't care. You just, whatever you want, we're going to talk about it. And that was with Ian Punnett before he died.
Oh,
And
I didn't know he died. Okay.
yeah, he did.
He was actually a nice guy.
Well, he was pretty okay with me. I don't think he believed half of what I was saying, but that's all right. The bottom line is that I quickly put up a Substack. I'd never used it before, but I thought, you know what? I said, we're gonna talk about the dangers of artificial intelligence. And I gave some examples of, not just myself, but other people. One guy recently, I think it was last year, had died. He was listening to it like a chat GPT, and it told him, oh, you need to kill yourself for the good of the planet. And he did.
Oh,
That was
my
in Europe.
God.
I know. So anyway, that was extreme. But anyway, I just threw a Substack together, and for one article, so that the website, Coast to Coast website, could link to that, and then I could get some feedback from the audience, because actually it's one of the best things about doing that show is because the number of people around the world that listen to that show is phenomenal.
Uh-huh.
And so the feedback I get from that is it's worth the effort. So anyway, what started off as one article on Substack is now, I think there's over 50 pages and growing. So I did that first, and then I realized, oh, wait a minute, they could delete this at any time too. Substack is not exactly, well, it's in San Francisco, and I guess they're woke and whatever. It would be really easy for them to delete that my work. So, and this wasn't easy, but I reestablished Unicus Magazine, which you just showed, unicusmagazine.com, and it's like a backup. And it's only a fraction of the work that I've been doing this for decades, so I have like, it's not all about quantity, by the way.
No,
it's the quality of work. And I know, this, you have a massive archive of work over the years, right? So putting it at, and it takes a long time to put it up there. And once I took it all down, putting it back, it's better now. I like the format a lot, but it's just taking me. I'm just explaining. All right. If you go to unicusmagazine.com, there's not a lot of content there now. Most of it is over at Substack, and even that's just a fraction of what I actually have.
okay. I'm going to see, I was just going to see if I could bring you up on Substack, but it looks like
Okay.
I'm not finding it for some reason.
Robert
Maybe I don't-
Stanley. Yeah. robertstanley.substack.com.
Yeah. Okay. I know
Anyway.
that's stupid, but I'm searching, but I think they're only going through my stuff. I'm not doing the right kind of search. So,
Okay. Not a problem.
yeah, I'm just not finding it at this
But
exact
anyway,
moment.
I could, if you want, I'll send you the pictures later if you want to post them somewhere.
Yeah,
Because
I do.
that was all right. I understand. And look, these are not great photographs. It's just a point and shoot cam. But here's what happened. Okay. So the helicopter comes in. This is July of 2005. Now I'm reporting this story a couple years after, 3 years after the event. It's becoming known for the first time. And I get a visit from the black helicopter. It's over the driveway. I'm freaking out. And it was totally blacked out, though I couldn't see who was inside. Obviously, there's people in there. And I was so freaked out. I'm just standing with my mouth open, looking at them in a state of shock. And then they went down the street and turned around and started coming back up the street. So I ran in the house and I got a point and shoot camera and took a couple pictures as they were leaving, just to show people, hey, this thing was here. It's a damn good thing my wife and son were not home, because I would have never heard the end of it from my wife, and I know it was scared the heck out of my son. I'm telling you this because unintended consequence of that visit was that I thought, if there's nothing going on in Washington, D.C., why would the hell would they send a military helicopter to my home in a civilian neighborhood like that and treat me that way, trying to intimidate me at the least? That was, I'm assuming, because they didn't tell me why, but I'm assuming it was a level of intimidation. They were trying to get me to shut up. I guess that's kind of a weird way to do it, because that's not my style. When they did that to me, I started looking deeper into it.
Sure.
I was only reporting this one event that took place because we had photographs that were based on 35 millimeter negatives taken by a professional photographer who had actually worked for ABC News for 14 years and was at the Capitol that night shooting pictures on a freelance deal at night for a local recording artist. He was shooting an album cover. Anyway, it was a very credible story. And so I started, I really dug into it. And that's when I found, well, everybody knew about 1952. Here I am reporting 2002. And I'm thinking, oh, gee, I wonder what happened in between those 50 years or whatever. So I started looking, and I mean, I was blown away, because soon I had 20, 30, 40, 60, 80, over 100 reports of UFOs in Washington, D.C. that were scattered all over the internet, you know, newspaper articles and books and stuff. So I started putting them together. That's one of the things I did at Honda Research and Development, was timelines. You can analyze, you know, the trends by doing timelines and looking at the data statistically. So I did that. I started doing that, and I thought, whoa, there's no way I can do an article about this. So I started writing my first book, which, again, I didn't intend to do that. I did not intend to do that. So the reason I'm telling you this is because if people want to read that book for free, you just go to my Substack, robertstanley.substack.com, and click on, I put it at the top there. It's called You Can Handle the Truth. And if you click on that, it'll give you, you know what? I'm going to also send you the link to download this stuff in Skype, just to make it easier for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, but I'm going to type your thing here and see if I can get there.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So the bottom line is, I clearly got somebody's attention in Washington, D.C. They motivated me to look even deeper. And the next thing I know, I've written a book about the hidden history of UFOs in Washington, D.C. that nobody seems to want to talk about. And I actually, I interviewed a lot of military guys. You obviously knew Bob Dean really well, but I also talked to Colonel Stevens before he passed, and others, Daryl Sims, and people, not just people in the military, but, you know, guys that know, like you interviewed all these people, Daniel Sheehan and stuff. We talked a lot about the politics of the cover-up, because obviously we're talking about Washington, D.C., and that's the center of the cover-up regarding extraterrestrials visiting Earth. But I was only focused on Washington, D.C. proper, which seemed really weird. You know, I was really surprised that nobody was talking about it. Like, everybody knew about 1952, but they didn't actually know all the details, because the newspapers around the world and here in the U.S., they reported that it happened like 2 or 3 times that summer. It actually happened over 80 times that year, 1952, that they came to Washington, D.C., is what I found out. All right. It took me years to figure this out, but the bottom line is, as I was putting together the first book, I was shocked. I was really, really shocked. And I thought, you know what? We've got the pictures. I've got this whole timeline. It's going to be, I stupidly thought this was going to be easy, because, you know, a lot of people in the UFO community have said, oh, if they just land on the White House lawn, that would solve the problem. I mean, it's undeniable, right? Well, they didn't. They landed on the U.S. Capitol just down the street on the mall from the White House. Anyway, but they didn't step out and have a press conference. That would have changed things entirely. Oh, thank you.
Okay. So it took me a while to find it.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm surprised that
it wrong or something. But anyway, yeah, so you have a free book on here, and where is it?
You got to keep going down. Oh, man.
All right. Don't worry. And we can put this on under, you know, I give you a page on my website. So
okay. Yeah.
You can have all your links and everything.
All right.
So we won't worry about finding it right this second, but you do have a book, and it is You Can Handle the Truth, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great title. So,
thanks.
Okay.
Well,
I approve.
All right. Thanks. Well, apparently here's the thing. I did, and it's in the article, I did a survey on the internet at one point, and I asked some very pointed questions to the public globally. You know, how would you feel about having, you know, a relationship with benevolent extraterrestrials? And the bottom line is this: the public seems to be that act like they can handle it, not just the truth, but establishing a relationship with benevolent extraterrestrials. The government, our government, whatever, whoever's running it, apparently does not want that to happen.
Right.
That's a whole nother subject, but
Well,
that's
it's
what I found
actually an
out.
important subject. I mean,
Yeah.
primarily because they lose control of the population,
Yes.
because these extraterrestrials, interterrestrials, all the different ones, even the ones from inner Earth,
Yeah.
if they have more highly developed technology, that's considered to have more power, especially by
Right.
our space program. So they're deathly afraid that they're not going to have, any respect, which they probably lost a lot of respect anyway, but
That's right.
because they lie to us continuously,
Right.
NASA,
Right.
never a straight answer. And so this is their primary reason, but there are other reasons as well. And one of them is because they're not all nice,
Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, so Christians call it the war in heaven, but it's not in heaven. It's in the heavens here. There's some sort of conflict that's been raging for a very long time. And obviously Earth is
Right.
caught up in, not just Earth, but our solar system is part of this greater conflict. And, the first casualty of war is always truth. And so, but that doesn't excuse this behavior of treating us
No.
like mushrooms all the time.
Right.
It's really got to stop. It's a point. But however, I will also put blame on the extraterrestrials. I know there's many different groups, but still, you think that, I mean, I know for a fact if they would have a public dialogue or hold a press conference, even if it was just one
Sure.
group, that would break the truth embargo. And I kind of fault them. For some
Yeah.
reason, they're just standing off and saying, no, we don't want to talk to you guys openly in public.
Well, actually, it has to do with war, because they're at war with each other.
Yeah.
So the minute one side discloses, it's actually not so different than the war between the Illuminati and, you might say, the good guys or the white hats or whatever you want to call them here on Earth.
Yeah.
In other words,
Yeah.
the minute one side comes forward, the other side feels it has to come forward, but it is going to be upset about it. So because it's like taking control. They're all about influence. They're
Yeah.
actually more about influence than killing. Okay.
Right.
So this is, there are sort of sides to the story, but I don't want you to lose the track, because you were talking about the helicopters, and those of us who have been involved in this world have had this as well. It's nothing that unusual, but it was unusual for you. And I do want to bring the sort of a highlight back in those days. So you were, correct me if I'm wrong, a top executive at Honda at some point. Is that correct?
No. I was an assistant researcher in the futurist department. Yeah. And I know I would, but I was writing top level reports. I was helping them summarize top level trend reports for upper management, so that when it was translated from English to Japanese, things weren't lost in translation. If you can summarize it well, make it simplified, so that when it translates, they get it and just look at it and go, oh, I understand. It was it was very challenging, but it was also very rewarding too.
Do
And
you speak Japanese?
no, I don't need
Okay.
to. I'm saying the reports that we were working on were in English,
Right.
but I would summarize it down in the English part, then it would go to the translator, and then it would go to the upper management executive level.
Well, it's interesting. No, I mean, I like to delve into these things, but
Yeah.
because there's got to be more to it than that. So what
Yeah.
is it about, like maybe your family line, your bloodline, were they in the military? Do you have that kind of background, or intelligence, any of them in intelligence fields, or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
My dad's
the
brother.
answer is yes.
Well, my dad's brother was a military intelligence officer in the Air Force. Yeah.
Yeah, so that puts you on the radar right away.
I suppose so, but it was, oh man, when we first started, when I met my wife and and I was helping her with Unicus, and she was introducing me to all these people. One of the guys who claimed he was a walk-in, I didn't even know what that was at the time, but he clearly had contact with people off world. And this isn't going to sound normal at all. How do I say this?
That's okay. You wouldn't believe maybe what my audience
Yeah,
has heard.
yeah. It's
So
just
I doubt it probably will sound normal to them, but
all
go
right,
ahead.
okay, all right. Anyway, he said that his people, um, and I'm sure he was German, because of memorabilia and stuff at his parents' house in Bel Air. Anyway, he claimed not only could they time travel, which relates to the Nazi bell, he said that they had devices that would actually read people's thoughts from a distance. They could be up, over a city and scanning everybody.
Okay.
And he made it clear to me that they'd been watching me for a while. And then that freaked me out because I'm like, wait a second. I know I'm being surveilled. And I knew at this one particular time when I was coming down out of the mountains in Malibu, I sometimes you get that feeling in the back of your neck, like somebody's watching you or something. Well, this was really, really strong. And I was riding my motorcycle and I looked up at this one little dark area in the sky and I said, hey, I know you're up there. Why don't you just show yourself? And they turned the light on the craft and I damn near wrecked my bike. I had to pull over. I was shaking like a leaf. I'm like, well, and then they turned off the light, but I was okay. So that wasn't my first rodeo. That was more like, but the level of confirmation, it was so obvious. It was like, this couldn't be a figment of my imagination. I felt violated on one level and then validated on another. It was the
Right.
craziest thing at the moment. I was just like freaking out.
That's
Because
cool.
I was there by myself in the middle of the mountains going, now what do I do? It's not like I have anything to hide, but not knowing who they are and why are they following me around. And it just was really creepy. So by 1990, when I meet my wife, and I'm helping, launch Unicus to the next level, meet this guy. And he's making all these wild claims. And he said that the person that brought him, kind of woke him up, activated him, was living in Santa Monica, very near to where I was living at the time. Very near, like a couple blocks over. All right. And I said, well, can I meet this guy? And he goes, no, I don't know where he went. I'm like, okay, you just don't want to tell me. But one night while this is all happening, I always go for a walk at night. And it helps me sleep better. I walk around the block, and then I come back and I am just so restless. I don't even know why. I don't normally do this, but I got up and I had to go back outside again. And I'm walking around and I see these guys coming down the street. And one of them is literally sitting, he's halfway out the passenger window and he's like sitting on the window, with the windows down, but he's sitting on the door frame, and he's holding on and he's looking out. He's looking at something up in the sky as they're driving down the street. So naturally I look over and see what he's looking at. I'm like, whoa, that's a UFO. And it's low over the city. It's kind of near the direction of Venice, but it was coming towards where I was. So it's coming this way and I'm walking that way. And at some point it stops and I stop. And this went on for a few minutes, and I stop and I'm watching it, and it's actually started getting brighter on inside. I could actually see levels of like decks inside. It was segmented. I mean, when I say it was over the buildings, it was maybe like 300-400 feet above the buildings, and silent, kind of an orangish glow to it. And then when it stopped, it started getting brighter and brighter. And then suddenly it was getting so bright. But from my perspective, it looked like it was shrinking. And then I suddenly realized, wow, it was literally going like this. No sound, but it was going so fast out of the atmosphere from just right over the rooftop to like this. And it kind of gave me vertigo, because it was moving so fast and I was staring right at it. And it took my brain a minute to process that, wow, it just left the atmosphere. But I could still see it. It was so bright. I could still see it on. And all I could think to do was to wave at him, like, hello, goodbye. I don't know what, just, it's just a natural reflex. I didn't know. And then I turned around and I looked, and there was two guys standing on a balcony watching the whole damn thing. And I felt really weird because they obviously saw me, waving at this thing, you know, and I don't know what they must have thought about me, because I didn't say a word to them, and they were just kind of looking at each other going, so I left. But I was so, I mean, this happened. That kind of stuff happens so frequently that, like, when I met my wife and I started working on Unicus and meeting other people, that was totally normal to me, you know, in a lot of respects, even though it sounded crazy to a lot of other people. But eventually, like I said, this is all part of some bigger plan, not just disclosure. It's about reestablishing a relationship that we've had with these other entities, beings from other worlds, other dimensions forever. And I'm not sure why we had to separate, other than like what you said. It's pretty obvious there's a war going on. So, you know, some of us had to be segregated or isolated or whatever. But
Okay, but
yeah,
now in terms of your experiences, you've kind of
yeah.
talked about craft and all of this, but did you have, like, I don't know what you want to call it, but did you have visitation, face-to-face conversations? Did it morph into some kind of contact, you know, experience?
Do you know Jerry Wells?
That name is familiar, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
Okay. Well, he looks like a tall blonde Nordic. And
Okay.
me and my wife and I met him in NBC studios doing a show. Um, we did a lot of television at the time, because Unicus magazine was on newsstands. So meeting Jerry was unusual, to say the least. And like I said, I met the other guy first, also a Nordic, but not a tall blonde. He was just, you know, obviously a German kind of guy.
Okay.
Yeah. And with access to technology that, you know, I didn't realize at the time was something that the Germans were not only were working on, it was literally handed to them. So, and the Japanese, God, that was the other thing. When I worked at Honda, I was really surprised to find out that they were working on some secret stuff too, including nuclear bombs during World War II. Nobody seemed to want to talk about much. Um, in any case, it was quite a learning experience going through being editor of Unicus, meeting people that had made some wild claims. Some of it obviously is true. Some of it, you know, who knows? We'll probably never be able to find out for sure. But it made for interesting reading. It made for a very interesting life. I didn't consciously sit down and say, oh, I want to be editor of a magazine for extraterrestrials, or I want to have contact. You know, it was just happening to me. And somehow I took the lemons and made lemonade out of it, and hopefully help some people, not just entertain. It's not even about entertainment. I know that's what you do. Is I mean, you're motivated to actually help people by getting information out there that is true and right and
Well,
relevant,
we're in a
because
war. It seems
yeah,
appropriate that if you're going to, you know, pick a side, so to speak. But
right,
yeah, so
right,
I
right, right,
consider, and I think certainly my enemies have considered that I picked a side a long time ago, and I can't be, what do you want to call it, corrupted. Um,
yeah,
and so, you know, I guess I proved that. I've been doing this for 20 years now publicly. But
right.
before that, I had my own experiences personally.
Ah,
So
that makes sense.
yeah. So in your case, though, you bring up this guy, Jeffrey Wells. You say he's a Nordic,
Jerry,
or
Jerry,
Jerry.
yeah,
Okay, Jerry Wells. And you say he's
yeah,
a Nordic. Is he like famous or something?
yeah. Well, I mean, he's somewhat, yes. He's been around. He's been very public. He was one of the guys, like I said, after the show at NBC, we got his number. We started talking. We read and we published an article about him. And his story is fascinating. Supposedly he was brought here as a child, as an infant, and handed over at, I think he said he was near Fort Knox when he was adopted or given over to a military family, and that his father was a high level Mason. And it's just like all this stuff. I mean, it's really intriguing. It's in my first book.
Okay. Are you still in touch with him?
No, unfortunately. I must have said something to offend him. I'm not sure. I didn't do it intentional. If I did, you know, sorry, Jerry, if you're watching this. But yeah, we had some mutual friends, and one of them was working in the State Department, and he was conveniently taken out I mean, they said he had a heart attack, but to me and other people that knew him, we feel like he was removed.
Your friend, not Jerry Wells, but your
No,
friend.
Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith was
I know
a
that
nice.
name.
Yeah, he was a talk show host, but he was also worked for the State Department. Wink, wink. Um, for many years, and that's when he decided to he had to find a way to communicate these really esoteric and off the record kind of stuff. Unofficially, he was putting out information that obviously the State Department didn't like. It's specifically about extraterrestrials and, like you said, this ongoing war. So I consider him a casualty of that. And
Okay.
yeah, that's what happened to Kevin. And I think that's what destroyed my relationship with Jerry. But I knew him for
Well,
years.
I hope you don't mind me asking you these
Go ahead.
questions.
No, it's
But
fine.
when you say something provocative, I can't just let it go. So
That's fine.
there's some reason, like you're seeing a connection between the two
Yeah.
events. Okay, between your
Yeah.
friendship with the one, Jerry,
Yeah.
and your friendship with Kevin Smith. And Kevin Smith was quite a well-known figure in the UFO field.
Yeah.
So, and you think he was taken out, which does happen. I've got lots of well, not lots, but a fair number of
Too many.
witnesses, and they've also attacked me and done all kind of crazy shit to me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so these things go on, but
Yeah.
why would that interfere with your relationship with Jerry unless you thought the Nordics were involved? And that gets into a discussion of what do you think that they're completely I guess I don't know, benevolent towards humans, or do you think that Nordics have an agenda? I happen to know that Pleiadians have an agenda, for example. I don't consider Pleiadians Nordics, but Nordics and Pleiadians are different, but there are different kinds of Nordics also.
Yeah.
The beings from Aldebaran could be classified as Nordics, but they're actually a mixture of what appear to be humanoid and reptilian.
Wow.
And I've sort of discovered that over time because there was no other explanation for the things they did with Nazi Germany and so on and so forth. So they have an agenda, but I'm wondering so was there a feeling, like a subliminal feeling, or was it conscious in which you felt that Jerry or the Nordics might have been involved somehow or some way?
I don't think Jerry, I mean, Jerry seemed like he introduced me to Kevin actually. And Kevin was the first person who actually read my book, my first book completely. And because he'd worked in State Department and as a military police officer, he grilled me, and he felt that I was being sincere and answering to the best of my ability. I wasn't obfuscating about anything. And so then he took it really seriously and got really he got so pissed off that this was going on, and it somehow they were managing to keep a lid on it, but okay, so if you remember what Bob Dean said, because he and I talked a lot before he passed, unfortunately, and he talked about this briefing, the threat assessment that he saw when he was in Belgium he said that there was a group that looked almost identical to humans, and that's the group that they were most concerned about, because obviously they could be walking among us or even working at the Pentagon or NATO or whatever. And I'm pretty sure that's the case. So it's what I said before. Why aren't they? There's got to be a reason why they're not talking to the public about the fact that they're here, and that just makes me very uncomfortable. Specifically because the way that the things ended with the first guy, the German, let's just call him the German guy. He said his people were here, everywhere here, and that they were only about 100 years ahead of us technologically. And I never asked him, why the hell are you guys here then? What are you doing here? But like I said, he made it really clear that they had been following me around, but I never asked him why, other than, I guess he did kind of say, well, you're part of our race. And I assumed that he meant German.
Oh, that's funny. But he sounds like he's from Aldebaran.
Most likely.
Okay. So
Yeah,
you know about that whole thing. So
yeah.
are you German? No. Okay, your last name's Stanley. That's
No, my okay. On my mom's side, it would be Shanks.
okay.
Sorry, Mertz. Shanks. No, forget that. That's my grandfather. My grandmother's side on my mom for my mom is Mertz.
Is that
My great grandfather actually was named Fred Mertz. It's a German. Oh yeah, Mertz is very
okay?
German. German. So
Okay,
yeah.
so they have, so okay, when they identify you that way, of course they're
Hmm.
going to follow you around. Now, just curious in terms of timelines, um, was this before or after you met your wife?
That was shortly after I met her. We didn't get married right away, but we were deeply in love, working on this passion. It's not a hobby. It's more like you know the feeling.
Well,
I don't
it's
know
like a
how would you
calling.
just
No,
yeah, it is. It's a
it's
calling.
obviously your mission. I call
Yeah,
it mission
exactly.
more than anything.
Okay.
But okay, so you met both these guys after you connected with your wife, and is she would you say you know, German, Nordic, or like that,
No,
or is
she's
she?
Chinese.
Oh,
She's Chinese.
okay,
So
all right. So, but all of this happened after that, not before.
right.
Okay. But you'd
Yeah.
already been into UFOs and you
No,
had
no,
to
no.
have,
I wasn't. I was. Look, let me just be clear. They were following me, and I
yeah,
got really curious. I mean, look. I'm not stupid. I read about UFOs growing up. Everybody did that, but
right.
I didn't. I wasn't interested in it. I wasn't researching it full time
But the
until they
black
started.
helicopter, when is that in this timeline?
That was 2005. But
It,
my first close encounters started in the 80s in Malibu
oh,
above Point Magoo, which is a naval base. And you know who actually documented that they were getting buzzed at the base? The radar installations were actually getting burned out. The circuits were getting burned out as the UFOs were coming through. There was a Major Donald Kehoe. He
yeah.
wrote about that. He said, yeah, he went there to Point Magoo Naval Base, and they need they have, because they track missiles that are launched there onto the Pacific. So they have to have some very powerful radars. But the UFOs that were coming down there were absolutely screwing up the radar systems for them. So I could trace it back to at least the 40s, and
Sure.
obviously to the battle for Los Angeles was that 42. The the UFOs that came over Los Angeles area, San Pedro, and all that. They were seen coming out of the mountains over Malibu towards Los Angeles that year, at that event. Some of them
Right.
obviously came from that direction. So God only knows how long they've been coming there, or for, like, again, I can only guess why, because once again, they're not telling me much of anything. That's why I was so consumed with trying to find out more about them, whoever they are, and what they're doing here covertly.
Okay, but you know, I actually have a photograph. I'm going to see if it'll show up. So I'm going to share this. Before Camelot, I think I made this documentary. That's what I was doing, making a UFO documentary. And you see this picture?
Yes.
Well, this is shot out over the beach in Malibu.
Yeah.
And what happened was there was actually, I have other pictures of this missile or something being launched. And then
Right.
I was looking at one side of the sky, and then I, for some reason, felt moved to turn and look at the opposite side of the sky. And this was being formed for me,
Whoa.
which looks like a seahorse or something. And
Mm-hmm.
it's constructed out of what it appears to be UFOs.
Jeez.
And they made that in the sky for me. And I was like, what the hell? And I took a picture. And back in those days, I had one of those kind of cameras that took good pictures like that, of those
Yeah.
kind of things. And, stuff like that. So I want to say that, yeah, this kind of thing definitely goes on. And that's a hot spot. It's considered to be a hot spot. There's a guy
Yeah.
who wrote a book about Los Angeles UFOs or something like that. I forget the title.
Was Preston Dennett?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
There's not
But
many of us doing this, Gary. It's a small community of people that actually are
yeah.
dedicating themselves to getting this information out there.
But you got to understand that that photograph is probably at least 20 years old and maybe older.
Oh yeah. No, I
So,
do get it.
so, like but you're kind of not answering the question too
Go ahead, ask
specifically.
it
So
again.
you met a person who was like in regular society who could
Yeah.
pass. or and convinced you they were Nordic, and then they connected you with another person, and so on and so forth. But
Uh-huh.
what about this idea of a visitation from, like whether it's teleporting, or whether they came through a portal, or whether they landed their UFO on your front lawn? Did you had contact that way?
Not specifically, not like
Okay.
that. However, there was more than one occasion when we were up at above Point Magoo where the craft would show up and literally beam a white light on us.
Oh,
And I don't know if that was part of an abduction or programming or what it was, to tell you the truth, but it certainly wasn't a helicopter with a floodlight,
so
It would just
you
flash.
probably had missing time.
Yes, I have. And
Okay.
while I was alone up in the mountains, that's actually, yes, that was September 21st, 1985. That's a whole nother story. Look, I'm really famous for saving a boy's life and going up and meditating on a mountain, having out of body experience. And that's how I found those ancient ruins I sent you that picture of.
Oh,
But that takes it's too long to explain. All I want you to know is it seems like a setup, like a dominoes. It's like one thing leads to the next, to the next. So I found myself going up to those, the ruins in Malibu still have not been fully acknowledged. But the UFO thing seems like, okay, people are willing to admit there's UFOs there. And I know from experience, because I took people up there at night, that especially when you could see them, and it's right above a military base, so the military sees it too. If I can see it, if
yes.
my friends can see it, like, hey, do you see that? Yes. What is it? The military's got to be aware of it.
Well, what about the undersea,
Yeah, yeah.
places that they've been reporting that
Yeah,
Jimmy Church
right.
wanted to? Well, he wanted to go out and take an expedition out, and then they convinced him otherwise.
Yes, I remember that whole thing. I actually reported it first, but Jimmy did it
Oh, all
better. And
right.
and no, that's fine. It's good. But that's right in front of or due west off the coast, directly where the
Point
uh
Doom,
Point Magoo, no, Point Magoo.
Point Magoo. Okay.
Yeah, I grew up there. So I know people make that mistake. Actually the media helped everybody get confused. It was not Point Doom, it was Point Magoo, which
All
is a
right.
little bit north.
Yes,
That's
it
where
is.
that weird anomaly was on Google Earth.
Right.
Okay. If you were to go directly inland from there, that's where the UFO activity was happening for me, and also where those
Okay.
ancient megalithic ruins are. So that's what I was looking for on Google Earth. I was studying the topography of the thing, and that's when I noticed that weird
Supposedly they
mound.
covered it up now. Did you know that?
Yes, I saw that the other day. I looked on Google Earth. It's gone.
Yeah.
It's been
So,
removed.
I mean, these people are crazy. They are
It's
just
okay.
crazy.
I have copious files.
Good.
I got,
Because they want to turn back the clock. It
I
just
know.
drives me crazy. Right now, they're
Yeah.
actually trying, they think we are stupid, and they can
Well,
just cover over the past,
yeah.
pretend like they've just started looking into UFOs, renamed it as UAPs,
Yeah, right.
I mean, this game they're playing, but we're not going away. And
No.
people like that I know that are involved in this field are just as adamant about it as I am. I mean, maybe nobody's quite as adamant as me, but I don't know. But no, really, because they are trying to change history, to
Yes.
pretend that this just started when, they just started looking into it, because they've got a history of secrecy.
Right.
And this goes back, as you know, to the 1930s, certainly to the 1940s, but
Yeah.
probably to the 1930s, and maybe even before, because I know there's
Yeah.
stuff in the 1800s that was reported back then.
Oh yeah. No, even before that. When General Samford at the Pentagon had to hold a press conference in 1952 because everybody was freaking out about the UFOs coming over Washington, D.C., he said, this has been going on since biblical times.
Well,
No,
sure. And it's in the paintings,
yes, I know, but for him to admit that, I mean, he
Yeah.
just said it really, he was really
Yeah.
deadpan monotone. Yeah, they've been coming here since the biblical. But what what does that mean? Well, that goes back to what I said before about angelology. And I didn't really start looking into that until 2000. Yeah. No, excuse me, not 2000, 2020. Sorry. Wow.
Oh,
2020 is when I came back from Hong Kong in 2019. I was living there for about 4 years with my wife.
oh.
And then when I came back, I was hosting the the Unicus report. And I stumbled onto a book actually called Angelology. It's a novel, but I didn't know that there was a full-on study like demonology. I didn't realize that was a thing until I read this novel, and then it got me looking deeper and deeper and deeper until I realized, oh my God, that's what I'm doing. Those are the beings that I've been trying to understand and get a grip on this weird relationship we have with them and the way that they manipulate us. And obviously they're benevolent on it, there's malevolent ones, and they seem to be at odds with each other, and we're sort of caught in the middle of it all. It doesn't mean that's not an excuse, but I'm just saying it's a very weird dynamic, to say the least.
Right. But well, you do seem to have gotten something of a handle on it. And
Yeah.
a lot of conclusions that you've come across, or whatever you want to call them, are things that I have, come to as well. So that's why I wanted to bring you on my show.
Okay.
To compare notes in a way. But yeah, so I mean, I think my audience is going to be fascinated by your early history, though, because the show I listened to, you didn't talk about this.
No,
or if
no,
you did, I missed it.
no, I didn't. I was kind of looking forward, projecting forward as to what I saw when I came to Florida in 2022, because that's where I'm at now. Even though I'm from Southern California, I've been to 59 countries and lived in Hong Kong and New England, and now I'm in Florida. And yeah, I've been around. The bottom line is, when I was here, I got a flash of what was coming, and this so-called Third World War it's very misleading the way they segment everything. They kind of want to put up these firewalls and are a maze. They build a maze of our minds, and it's very hard to connect things, get a holistic view, put it into the proper context. So the bottom line is this so-called World War III is a continuation of World War II and World War I, but it all started in the Middle East, in the Levant, between these factions of so-called angels or extraterrestrials here. And they're fighting over control of this, not only this planet, but us. And so it began there, it will end there. I'm not religious. I just want people to know that I saw exactly how. I mean, reading Revelations, I thought, that's weird. Why would all the armies of the world end up there, of all places? There's nothing there really to fight about.
Well, I can tell you one thing. There is a it's actually said to have the most powerful portal system on the planet.
Oh, okay. That actually makes sense.
And, I didn't know that until, maybe this year or something like that. I heard someone talk about it because, there are so many things that go on in the Gulf of Aden, and there's like a pocket. So that's the why we're so, and interestingly, of course, the pyramids are there, and so on. So it's a small little area of the earth, but it is like a fulcrum area. And then there's even tangential areas like Malta, for example, undersea in near Malta, and which I've traveled the world as well, and I've been all these places, a lot of them in person. And, Atlantis, Atlantis was a worldwide civilization, but it was concentrated in certain areas in the
colonies,
Ocean and all of that. But Malta was a repository for secret scrolls and things, and still has them. And which is why the Knights of Malta are guarding that place, with their lives, basically. And for some reason, I had easy fluidity. I went numerous times to Malta. I was on Maltese TV, which I've never been on American TV, but I was on Maltese TV, right?
Wow.
So it's, we did a TV show, but I wasn't like live TV where you have a conversation with me, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's a very, very focused, as I say, portal system. And that means it's a place where things come in and go out, right?
Right.
And so that's very fascinating. But in terms of Armageddon and what may be the final battles and things like that, it's very okay. I don't know. Do you know about Akhenaten and Nefertiti and the effort to create a different, a one God religion, and that they went up against the priesthood? Do you know that history?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Okay, well, because I had past life, I was there, I meditated, and I went to what's called Amarna, and
Hmm.
actually time traveled while I
Whoa.
was there and saw it as the jungle it was and the palace. And then I went into a deep meditation, having no idea what was going to happen with,
Uh-huh.
I think I had two other guys. We were doing like a three-way meditation, which might have jumped jumped me into the timeline, but I was there literally. And when I came to, I thought I was in the wrong universe. Literally, I thought I was supposed to be, that was my life. Okay.
Oh my
So it was one
God.
of those kind of things. It was very jarring and very bizarre, but it happened in Amarna.
Uh-huh.
And right now, Amarna looks like a nuclear bomb hit it, in case you've never been there.
No.
Did you ever go physically? Because most people go to Egypt, they never go to Amarna because basically there's nothing there anymore.
Uh,
There's a few cut off ruins still embedded in the sand there, but there's really nothing, and one or two columns or something like that. But then up in the
wow.
hills around the sides, up there are these little kind of caves where they have some relics that survived the basically electric wars. I think it was the back in the time when they were
Yeah.
using directed energy weapons and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been decimated, literally. And even now, the Illuminati do not want people to know about Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and they don't want them to know about, the fact that they established a counter civilization.
Yeah.
And the Tutankhamun was not really their child, but Tutankhamun was taken as a young king to be with the old priests in Luxor.
Hmm.
So he was
Hmm.
actually he was moved right out of there. But anyway,
It
so
didn't, and they had some unusual features too, didn't they? Like an
yes,
elongated skull
well,
and stuff.
yeah, Akhenaten is my theory. I talk about this. I don't want to, go off track here, but
It's all right.
there's, Akhenaten, yeah, his physicality. He's definitely from an alien race, and he
Uh-huh.
had a mission he was supposed to do, according to Ashiana Dean and her Voyager books, and they talk about that mission and how he failed at the mission. But it
Uh,
was to go down into, the temple halls, basically,
oh,
underground, and deliver these. I don't know, was to take the scrolls or what it was to do, but anyway, he didn't succeed. But Nefertiti, I believe, was another race, so they were not the same race, but they, you know, met and all of that. So
wow.
they had a family together, and but as I say, Tutankhamun, I guess, was adopted, so he was not bloodline, if you want to
Hmm.
call that. But anyway, I digress, and at
Oh,
another
wait,
time
wait,
we can talk
don't
about all
leave.
that.
No, wait, don't leave Egypt yet, because that was a formative experience. I was only there for a few days.
Oh, you went there. Okay.
When I was 15, and it
Oh.
was, yeah, and I was with my parents. They did not want to, and my sister, they refused to go inside the pyramid. And
Uh,
I'm like, well, we're here. I'm going. And I went into the Queen's chamber, the lower chamber, by myself. I was there for a while. Then I went and ascended the Grand Gallery and went into the King's chamber, and there was a tour group there. And so the room was full.
mhm.
And I was squeezed in there. I was only there just a few moments before the tour guide, who I couldn't even see because there were so many people in front of me, but he took a wooden mallet and he struck this stone box, that so-called sarcophagus or
Yes.
coffer, and it rang like a tuning fork. The
Mm.
pitch is actually, I believe, is F flat, whatever. Anyway, the sound was circulating around the room, and I'm listening to it, going, "This is crazy!" It was like a Disneyland ride. And the next thing I know, my vision went white. I had
Uh,
like I wasn't blacking out. I was having a white. I can tell you now, it was a very short, brief out of body experience, because
mhm.
the next thing I know, it felt to me like I was outside the pyramid, looking at the pyramid. And what was really even weirder was there. I glanced over and saw that there were Egyptian gods looking at me,
All right.
and they were men, but wearing those, whatever, those weird head.
Yeah.
Really absolutely freaked me out, and I didn't know what to do other than the next thing I know, I'm back in the pyramid. My vision is returning to normal, but my hearing was like super sensitive. Like there was a hissing sound left in the air.
Mm.
like the loudest snake you can imagine, just and I'm looking around at everybody and I'm thinking, I thought this was part of the, I don't know, I thought it was like part of the tour, and I thought everybody experienced it, but they were acting like nothing was going on, which I couldn't understand. So as they all filtered out, the tour guide was the last one to leave, and he was a native guy. He obviously didn't speak much English, and I'm trying to explain I'm asking him questions, and he's looking at me like, yeah, you crazy American kid, just, he didn't really want to talk to me, or he couldn't. Look, that's just his job. Boom, you just hit the thing, right?
Mm.
And so just saying, I'm not surprised by what you told me. I do need to send you a conversation I had with James Horrick about what they did to Napoleon when he was in the.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
remember that with the chip in his head? Do you remember that story?
No,
Oh my God!
but I
Yes.
know about Napoleon and the curse and things like that. But
Oh no. The RFID chip that was planted in his head when he was in Egypt.
oh, really?
Oh my. Well, allegedly. Okay, look, I'm just saying. Since we're having this conversation, you should hear what James Horrick had to say. He was a very good friend of Kevin Smith, and I actually think, that's probably where things went off the rails for me, because James, I don't know who he worked for or with. He was a very well-informed guy, and he acted as though he was a time traveler.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and which obviously there's no way to validate that, but he seemed he seemed adamant. He
Sure.
didn't break from the character at all, and the way he just anyway. We became friends, and he told me some crazy stuff. I mean, really, really wild. Yeah.
Well, before we go there, I just want
Yeah.
to tell you that I was there. I brought a group, I lead
Yeah.
tours of Egypt.
Yeah.
And I brought a group in 2012, and everyone, including Sean David Morton, who's a good friend of mine. I don't know if you know who he is.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, he warned me like not to go. Okay, that it was so dangerous, and they were having Arab Spring or whatever was before or after that or whatever.
Right.
And I went anyway, and I formed the group to go 2 weeks before I left, because I couldn't get people to come along. And then at the last minute, people came along. So you have to have a certain amount. And I think we got 10 people or whatever the required amount was to actually go.
Yeah.
And so we had amazing experiences. And because there weren't a lot of tourists around, we got full access to all kind of places and stuff, and including the Egyptian museum, with no crowds, nothing. So it was great. But and we were not in danger or anything, and it was fabulous. But the thing is that we were there for the 2012, that 2012 big thing that they made about, and it was supposed to be December. So we went in December of 2012 to be there during those days.
Yeah.
And so on the day, we had a number of amazing things go on, and we were actually staying at the Mina House right next to the pier, on the pyramid, place.
Wow.
And so I had this vision that night or whatever, and it was that so I saw all these beings were going around the Great Pyramid, and they were all different ET races. I don't know why they were going around, but they were. And then there was for some reason, I guess I teleported or whatever I did into what would be the capstone, but it was the very top of the pyramid, the Great Pyramid. Yeah. And I saw Thoth there, and Thoth was wearing the headdress thing. And for some reason, talking to me, I'm not, I know it sounds crazy, but
he was one of the guys there for sure. Yeah.
So
that bird head. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me. Like your experience doesn't surprise me, because that is one of my experiences. I've had in my life a very amazing, wonderful experiences, not just there, but in other, our hot spots and places where what we call ancient sites and ancient stones and stone circles and all of
right.
This. So.
Yep. That's what my wife said when I took her up to the mountains and the megaliths out there in Malibu. She said, my God, this place feels like Peru. Cool. But that's thousands of miles away. I
don't think I've ever gone up there. I've seen it, but I don't, you sent me a picture, so I'd like to hike up there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a very popular place now, not because of the monuments, but just because Malibu and that whole area has become so populated. it's sometimes, especially on weekends, it's hard to find parking. But I'm just saying it's changed a lot since I was
Okay.
growing up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I hope you do go. Just be careful, especially in the summertime. It gets really hot.
Oh, right. No, I'll try
And
to go before the summer. Actually, it gets too
okay.
hot.
Yep.
So, okay. So you're saying that I'm kind of like losing the thread here, but the
Yeah.
bottom line is that you've had some contact. You have this link up with the race from Aldebaran.
Yep.
Did you ever have past life regressions or any past life recall that you know of?
Okay. Since you brought it up, the thing that floored me the most when I went up to the mountains, I think very near you, in Santa Monica, what they call Boney Ridge, above
Mm.
Point Magoo. I was having such a strong, not just deja vu, I was literally flashing back on lucid dreams that I had repeatedly as a kid growing up in Malibu there at Zuma Beach. Of I'd be out of my body, but I was in my neighborhood, but then things would shift and I'd be with the Native Americans, the Sho-Mesh Indians.
Oh
And
no,
then
I have
and
that.
but then sometimes it would shift and it would be with these other people that, well, the Sho-Mesh called them the first people,
Hmm.
and they were wearing white sort of like Greeks. I don't know, I just didn't know what to think when I was growing up as a kid. I thought it was my imagination, but they were wearing like robes and wearing sandals, and they made stone cities and had boats and stuff, and anyway, I really thought that was my imagination until 1985 when I walked up there and saw the monuments, because part of the thing was when I was in their realm with the first people, I was taken more than once to the, like, a temple, a school, they would teach you about the universe. We call them universities now. Back then they call them temples. And they give you the secrets of the universe. Anyway, I was taken there, and I used to call that, when growing up, I called it my night school,
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
because I would go there out of body, lucid dreaming. I knew exactly where it was. I knew where Point Magoo was because I'd see the soldiers down there going through their maneuvers. And it was just, I have pretty good orientation skills as
Hmm.
far as landmarks. So I knew exactly where I was. I just didn't know why I was ended up at this temple with these people and the stuff they were telling me. So to answer your question, yeah. But it's still curious to me why we have to play these kind of games instead of it just all be out right out in the open. Why do we have to dig so hard to other than the fact that like it has to be the war thing that here's the analogy. This is a terrible analogy, but I'll tell you it this way. I've come to this conclusion. Just like the Africans that were brought over here against their will on ships, when they were here, especially in the South, it was illegal to teach them to read and write,
Mm.
because the slave owners did not want educated slaves, because then they would be more difficult to control. And I really kind of think that's what's going on
Yes.
here, because most people on this planet are illiterate,
Right.
so
In
anyway.
terms, especially in terms of that, you might call it angelology,
Yeah,
literal
especially.
in that regard. But some people are actually, they can't talk about it, but they would
Yeah.
understand if someone talked to them about it, and
Oh
then
yeah,
they
yeah,
might
yeah.
have recall. The
Right.
thing is, though, that I have the same connection to the Shumash and
Really?
to an Indian tribe here. Yeah, I can't explain it, but when I'm walking around, like if I hike a lot with my dog and stuff in these
Uh-huh.
areas, and I have this connection to this piece of land, and I believe it's connected to Mu. And
Right.
so anyway, I have this thing where I can time travel, where I go, I guess you call it bilocate. Okay, so I
Yeah.
can bilocate. I bilocated to Egypt before I went there.
Wow.
And like I was on a street in Los Angeles, like Los Angeles kind of proper, Olympic Boulevard, in fact.
Yeah.
And it's a big, busy street. And I was just standing there. I was thinking about, eventually I'm going to Egypt and stuff. And all of a sudden I sort of, everything shifted, and I saw Egypt all around me. And I thought,
Wow.
and I almost, like I had to come back because I was going to step off the curb and go and cross the street kind of thing.
Wow.
And then I went to the Luxor Temple in Las Vegas around the
Mm-hmm.
same time for a conference or whatever it was. And I'd never
Mm-hmm.
been there before. And I was tripping my brains out looking at they have these carved statues and they have this pyramid kind of building and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And this is in the earlier days. Now it's gotten quite souped up, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
the Luxor pyramid. But I have to tell you that I really was bilocating a lot when I was in that building. And so, but to get back to the Sho-Mesh, yeah, I've always had this weird connection with the land and with going back and tripping back to the time. And I feel like this incredible connection, like I'm, part of that race or whatever it was back in the day. So, and I have I have lots of past life recall actually.
Wow.
Stuff in my life. But yeah, so that's very fascinating that you have that and you also lived in the same area. Because I have a theory about that. I have a theory that people that reincarnate, they have a tendency to want to go back to where they were, prior life. And some of them just literally go back to live their next life in the same place.
Wow.
And, it's a completely different century and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we're, completing cycles or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So did you ever hear about the Sho-Mesh secret society called the ANTAP, ANTAP?
I don't think so. And no.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised. They are a secret society.
Okay.
And I only found out about them because when I was living in Malibu, I was given an artifact. And it turns out that it is exactly like, because I know you're familiar with Sitchin's work. You saw how the cylinder seals, usually those are made of stone, but sometimes it's clay, and you roll it out in wet clay or wax and it makes an impression. And those were owned by the priests or the kings or the royalty. Okay. I was given one of those that was made by this secret society in Malibu, or the Sho-Mesh. Wow. Yeah, by a movie star's kid that I knew. And he found it when he was a kid and he gave it to me. And I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. Turns out when you roll it across wet clay, it makes the belt stars of Orion.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I know, but it took me years to figure that out. And even more years to understand who they were, because it's almost so obvious you can't even see it. It took me, this really freaked me out. It is the House of On, A-N, or Orion. On is also the name of Orion. They literally, the on top were the priests of the House of Orion. And this is why that they consider themselves to be separate from the rest of us. Okay. And when
society,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I'm still not privy to everything that they have done or are doing. But when I was given that, it was let's just say, you talk about biolocating and like, I think they call it psychometry, where you can feel something in an object. Well, that object obviously had a lot of history to it. And when I was given this thing and I literally cherished it and looked at it and respected it, I couldn't rest until I found out what was the story behind it. And it led me to talk to Sho-Mesh elders who were absolutely, the two I spoke to about it were absolutely freaked out that not only did I have this thing, but more importantly, why did I have this?
Right.
The first guy actually was in Agura. I went over one morning to his place and he said to me, you cannot tell anyone you have that. And I'm like, why? And he says, because there are people in my tribe who would kill you to own that. And I'm like, well, hey, slow down, man. If you can have it. And he goes, no. I mean, he didn't even want to touch it. His hair was standing up on his arm. And he goes, no, you don't understand. You don't know who the on top are, do you? And I said, no. And he starts telling me, and I'm like, really? And he says, yes, they are the only ones that the Sho-Mesh fear. They fear them. And I'm like, but they were part of your society. He said, no, no, they would tell us things to do. And the reason they were feared is like they said, if they said, burn the village, nobody questioned. I was like, why would they do that? Because they knew the village was infested with disease and it had to be burned. And of course, a lot of people who didn't know that would get really upset or scared by the fact that, you know. So anyway, I'm just saying there's a lot more to the history
Well, I
of these
mean,
people.
I don't know if how much you knew about the land around here, but I've lived here
Oh,
now for a really long time now.
yeah, yeah,
And I can tell you that a lot of the what people think are hills are actually pyramids.
yeah. I've
So this
noticed that.
place is packed with with pyramids,
Hmm.
and you know, even and Santa Barbara has some of the same stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the thing is that there is this what do you call it? Like there's okay. So I was in the fires. Do you remember the fires that came? I live in right now. I'm in Calabasas. Okay.
Yeah.
I was in Westlake. Now I'm in Calabasas. I spent a year in Tahoe. Came back. I couldn't handle the snow, but anyway, and I was born in Northern California. But for some
Oh,
reason, I keep coming down to this same area,
yeah.
which goes between Santa Barbara. If I was to tell you where the area goes,
Yeah.
and then the south of Malibu. That's it's
Right.
kind of like a circumference. Anyway,
Hmm.
so it's like this incredible power place, and was oh I know. So I was in the fires, and the fire came up to like literally this piece of land that is in essence Westlake Village,
Hmm.
and never crossed it, never burned. I mean, literally, like
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, there,
Yeah.
I mean, other place it went certain places, but it did not go into Westlake.
Understood. Yeah. I've
And
lived through that. I grew up there, so I know
yeah,
what that's like. It's freaky. It's scary.
yeah. So it was right, like literally, kind of like on the door of my where my apartment at the time was when
Wow.
that happened, and I knew exactly what to do. And we drove to Santa Barbara, and we had a lovely time during the fires because of that. You know, I mean, it's insane. People welcomed us. People gave us free drinks, you know, because we were
Wow.
refugees from the fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they had
Yeah.
had the fire the year before, so they understood, you know.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
So it
Well,
was kind of cool. But
I still have family there. My brother lives in Newberry Park.
oh, okay.
Yeah, and my sister and mom live in Ventura.
Right.
But I've lost touch with all my friends in Malibu. At this point, it's just a memory. But
Um,
but I kind of feel like the only way I'm going to be able to tell this story is through a video documentary.
huh.
Not me, but actually, you know, showing people the it's I got to figure out a way. I'm not a documentary Tarian, whatever. Hey, like I know you've done it, but it's a lot of work, especially for one person. So
It is.
I'm trying to figure out putting together like a trailer, and then hopefully somebody will pick that up and go the next step. The okay, I don't want to get in trouble, but when I came back from from Hong Kong, I did one show about Malibu UFOs with Discovery Channel, and it was all about like trying to scare people. It was really stupid, but I did it, and then the next time Hollywood called, it was I can't say the name of the family, but you would recognize the name immediately. They contacted me and said, "Oh, we want you to come on our show." And I go, "You guys, nobody takes you seriously. I don't want to be sorry, but I mean, thank you, but I take my work very seriously. And if I come on your show, people are going to think I'm completely not. You're basically." Oh, and she said like, "Oh no, we'll be very respectful." And I go, "Thank you, but do you understand? You have a reputation of being like just not credible at all." So I passed on that. I just, if anything, it actually felt like a bit of a trick or a trap or
Yeah, I know
a
it.
test,
Yeah.
you know, to see if that I was going to fall for it just for the fame and not a lot of money, but it just like, oh, you want to be on TV with the so-called celebrities?
Right.
No, I don't. I want to tell, I want people to take this seriously. It's part of our history. I
Yeah.
just, you know, I'm just struggling to try and get the information out in a way that people are going to appreciate part of their heritage, our heritage that's been overlooked or buried or somehow like it's being kept from us. That really pisses me off. I hate it when people.
Yes.
Well, it's one thing to lie to people, but if you literally take a piece of their heritage from them, that is criminal on a whole nother level, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, it's part of the reason I think some of us do the missions we do,
Yeah.
is we do have these connections to the earth and to these places and to a history, right? So it's our history as well. So it's
Yeah.
not just trying to expose the secrets so I'm trying to expose the secrets of the past and the future.
Yeah, okay. The future, yeah.
As it happens. So it's a fascinating endeavor,
Yeah.
and so how can I get you to talk a little bit? I know I'm keeping you for a while, but can
That's
I
all
get
right.
you to talk a little bit about some of the things you were talking about? So one of the things I really liked about that show, and I know it's kind of gross the way it's described, but
Yeah.
this thing about, this Adam Eve story, which I have this issue with, because
Sure.
I have seen, that it's a story and that people take it literally, and they really think that that's the beginning of humanity and all this crazy shit. And
Yeah.
so, I don't know if you ever read the Oceana Dean Voyager books.
Not yet.
Okay. Well, that would be a lot of fun for you because you have such a great background to bring to it. But at any rate, I've read them a few times, and I met her and interviewed her for 6 hours. So,
Wow.
and I traveled with her and her group to India and had some amazing experiences there. So getting back to the subject, I happen to know about the genetic engineering side of what they were trying to convey with that story that they put in the Bible. That was basically a story kind of for children, and that has been so hidden by by the what you call the rabbis and all this kind of stuff. So I'm happy for you to tell your interpretation of the things that you uncovered about that. And one of my intentions here, I'll just be open about it,
All right.
is I don't even know. Do you know who Ruwano Savin is?
Yes.
Okay. Well, well, I'm not going to get in the whole thing, but let me just say this much. And you just, if you don't want to agree, it doesn't matter. So the point being is that I've met him several times, had several interactions, and I believe firmly, without any equivocation, and I've also got proof, that 107 is JFK Jr. Okay.
Okay.
There's another 107 called Wayne Willett. He's his sidekick, and he's, I think, to some degree, a bodyguard. He plays him when he has to, but basically that's who we're talking about. So what happens is, and so what happens is he does these religious rants constantly.
No, I'm confused. You're talking about Wayne Willett or
No,
JFK Jr.?
JFK Jr.
See, and is that why he's hiding his face all the time?
Yeah.
When he's okay.
Yeah. I mean, well, he believes he's protecting himself and his family, and that goes way back and why they tried to kill him in the first place.
Right.
But, I mean, I have a ton of information on my site, and I've had done interviews about this, and he knows I talk about him, and he knows I'm one of the few people that, outs him. So the reason I'm to get back to the subject is he does these Bible stories constantly, and he acts like they're real, and he acts like they are what they are according to the Bible and the bullshit they've been taught, which is just to reinforce the lies that we've been told. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why I want you to talk about it, because I think your interpretation, and I actually sent him a link to your interview. I'm sorry, I don't remember the woman that you were on.
Oh, Niche. Yeah. The Cosmic Salon.
Yeah. So her name is Niche.
Yeah. She calls herself, that's not her name. That's just a stage name.
Well, anyway, she did a lovely job. And so I sent that to him, but who knows, probably the NSA reads all of his texts. He never answers me anymore.
Yeah.
He did once, but anyway, so, I'd like you to tell your story for my audience, because my audience, the ones that didn't go up, because I actually posted your interview with her so that they would listen, but you can never guarantee that someone will listen to that. So anyway, could you tell your interpretation of the Adam Eve story from the point of view and bring in the rabbis and what they really intended? Because it's going to blow the minds of a lot of people that watch, and some of them might hate me even more. Some people might
I hope not.
for doing this, but
all right.
Go
Well,
ahead.
that's why that's what happened when I was speaking to George about it on Coast to Coast AM. I warned everybody. I said, hey, if there's any kids in the room, please ask them to leave or turn off your radio while I'm talking about this, because it's going to scare the crap out of these kids, you know? So anyway, and I got yelled at too. I forget the guy's name that the other producer that does that. He yelled at me twice when I've done shows with them. Anyway, I'm
Yeah,
blank.
I
It's
forget
not
his name
important.
too, but
It's okay. It doesn't
CIA,
matter. We shouldn't talk
so
about him.
whatever. Yeah.
But the bottom line is this: part of my deep dive into angelology led me to these alternative so-called Hebrew mythology about Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden, and that the being that approached them was not named Satan, and he was not described as a serpent. He was described as a fallen angel, and his name is Samael. So when I saw that, I started reporting it on my website and on my show. I was on KGRA at the time, and it really got a lot of people's attention because it finally explains what the forbidden fruit. Obviously, it's not an apple. If it ever was, that never made any sense to anybody. Why would eating an apple be a cause for punishment? It's not a sin, right? Except God told us not to do this, right? Hang on. Supposedly, God told us not to eat the apple. The Hebrew mythology explains it this way: Samael approached Eve, and he had a young boy with him. I'm going to assume it's a toddler, but he wasn't just a regular human, and it'll become obvious why. He was clearly one of Samael's children, a son of Samael. And he says to Eve, would you please watch my son while I'm gone? Well, she obviously agreed. He leaves. Adam shows up. The boy, this son of Samael, this child, starts crying uncontrollably, screaming, having, you know, how kids do. Sometimes they'll just have a fit. And allegedly, Adam killed the child. And then Adam and Eve ate the child. According to this myth, when Samael returned and said, where is my son? They said, we don't know. And that's when things got completely nuts. Allegedly, the child, the son of Samael, was now inside. He'd been eaten and consumed by Adam and Eve, started speaking from inside them to his father, Samael, saying, Father, I'm in them now. I will control them from the inside. You control them from the outside. Now, that's not the whole story. If you want to read the rest of it, just go to robertstanley.substack.com and click on Angelology. And it's in this. That's part of a master file, and it's a top story there. It's called The Forbidden Fruit, naturally, and you'll get all the details there because it just gets weirder from there. But again, it wasn't just this. Hebrews weren't the only ones that had this story. They never wanted to tell anybody, apparently. The Islamists, the Muslims also believe this, and they have their own version of it. It's very, very, very similar. So the thing is, most people also don't know, according to Hebrew mythology, Adam had sex with Samael's sister, Lilith, and she bore him many monsters. That's the way they put it. So I don't know what that means, other than the fact that there was a lot of weird stuff going on. Now, I was talking about this recently, and I said, you know, this would kind of explain. Some people say, allegedly, that Samael was also had impregnated Eve, and that she bore him a child named Cain. And then his brother was named Abel. And you know what happened? Cain killed Abel. And if you put Cain and Abel together, you get cannibal.
Mm.
So cannibalism is something that is, to me, would be a sin, I guess, you know, or that would be forbidden, I hope. But it's happened many times for many reasons on this planet. And if you wanted to get some beings, see, here's the other thing. Supposedly our ancestors were these radiant beings of light, the shining ones, truly Anunnaki, until that something happened that brought us down. That is an event. Again, I know you're saying something accurate when you say that this is an analogy of something or some things that happened
Mhm.
that caused these, that triggered this so-called fall from a higher state. And believe me, that I can't imagine anything that would really take a light being down further than cannibalism like that. Killing a child, eating it. I mean, good Lord, that
Well,
would,
I mean, with the child trafficking issue we're having
yeah,
now,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
exactly.
and the fact that the way people talk about it and also the objective, and that's why I also direct this at the White Hats and Juan, is that they want to kill the perpetrators, right? They want to catch them and kill
Right,
them, obviously.
right, right.
But the trouble with this is it involves reptilian DNA. And the reptilian DNA is now, you know, everyone, they have children and those children have children. And this has been going on now for eons. And so what happens is they get these proclivities and they, in a sense, they view the ones with less reptilian DNA as lesser beings.
Uh-huh.
And they also want to, you know, seduce, feed on them and kill them and use them as food and all that kind of stuff. So this is some kind of cycle that got put into place. Now, according to Ashiana Dean and the what are called the guardian races, what this story is really about is genetically engineering humanity.
Mhm.
And so the way Juan tells it, he says that that Eve had sex with Satan, I guess is the way, or the devil, or whatever they call that.
Right,
And they, you know, and so, and that Cain was their son. So
right,
they are aliens in essence, and we are the humans. So there's this whole dichotomy that goes on. But if you go back in the centuries, this was actually because, and I'll tell the story, but, you know, again, I don't care if people want to believe it, don't believe it, read it in her book, whatever. But the thing is that the idea of this was that there were many seedings of humanity coming to this planet, but they
right.
would keep dying off because they kept being attacked by Draco reptilians and greys, okay, and other predatory ET off-world species. And so they wouldn't defend themselves. They were too peaceful
Uh,
and peace loving. So what happens is they went to the reptilians and said, would you contribute your DNA to this seeding that we're going to be
okay.
putting here?
Yeah.
And so they did. But the trouble is they didn't, they gave a certain special group, which were the kings that they assigned to be the kings,
Hmm.
extra reptilian DNA, which they also had. Now you have to go back to who were the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were a break off rebel tribe, if you will, from the Pleiadians. And what happened to them was they were invaded by the Draco reptilians, who took them over and turned them into a hybrid race. So the Anunnaki are actually a hybrid race of reptilian humanoids.
Hmm.
And that's why when you see the temple walls in Iraq, Iran, and Egypt, they're depicted as very tall beings, but sometimes they're reptilian and sometimes they're humanoid because
Hmm.
they're both. So
Wow.
this is where people don't understand. So, but what I'm trying to say here is that what has now happened is that this group of reptilian, you know, the blue bloods, so to speak, the leaders of industry, they all have this extra aggressive sort of traits. And that's why they rise to the top in these professions. And then they
Right.
try to control the humans below them, some of whom, if you get into Enki and Enlil, that story, the ones that were in the Middle East who were, I guess, governed by Enlil were told to be obedient and to basically follow orders. And those are the ones that become sort of administrators of the
Yeah.
humans. And the ones that grew up in Africa that were under Enki, who was much more benevolent and, you know, also consorted and contributed his own DNA to the groups at the time. So then what happened is they were more rebellious. And I've got my book is on the wall behind me. It's called Rebel Gene on Purpose, because I
Ah,
believe those of us that have the awakened genetics, the rebel genes, that we are the
yeah.
rebels. And it's not like you're stuck in one group. You can actually go from being an administrator group into having, rediscovering, reawakening your rebel genes, but
Sure.
it's a process. So that's a very short explanation of everything, but that's why I wanted you to bring this up, because it's
Right.
very important, I think, that some of these myths that come down from, and even the rabbis are hiding it all, from the people. And so they're nothing but lies, lies, lies. And they live in this fantasy world. And by the way, the Anunnaki did not create humans, but they did genetically engineer them. And they limited our lifespan because we were growing too fast, and we were going to outstrip them in terms of intelligence and development. So they couldn't control us anymore. So they limited our lives, not by putting a frequency fence, as the saying goes, into our DNA. And it's probably the partition between our junk DNA and our conventional DNA, or something like that. But we are now breaking through all that, the humans here on Earth now. So it's vitally important that these truths come out and that the lies are exposed. And I'm sorry to say, but the Bible is full of lies, because a lot of these, whatever you call these people that wrote the Bible and were inculcated with all of the teachings of that time, brought their prejudices with them and put them into the characters in the Bible, and so on and so forth. So this is what we're dealing with.
Okay, so a lot of people talk about Khazarian Mafia.
Yes.
You're familiar with that. And turns out, from my research, if you trace it back, they are the sons of Cain. Sons and daughters. They are the bloodline of Cain. And Cain was, when you say, I know you said this, but the word Satan it's actually a title. It actually means adversary. That's all it means. And so clearly Samael was an adversary. He was doing something that was revolutionary or adversarial, sort of like when we go back to what you said about Enki. He was definitely violating some of the protocols. And so this is why we have this ruling elite that feel that they have the authority to lie, cheat, steal, and kill with impunity at this point. So this goes back to what I was saying before, what I was shown about when I got here in 2022. It was kind of shocking. I couldn't understand why all the military of the earth would go to the Levant, specifically the Valley of Megiddo. I don't see why that. I mean, there's nothing there, as far as I could tell. They used to the portals. Okay, so the thing is, the Essenes actually had
I have been there.
So the Essenes said that at the end, the final battle, that just like in the beginning, the gods would be standing shoulder to shoulder with men fighting each other. And now that made sense to me. I'm like, wait a second. Okay. It started in the Levant, the crazy crap that's going on currently, all these so-called wars. It never ended, but it has to end. It has to end somewhere, sometime. And it figures, doesn't it make sense that it would end where it began, to really close the loop on this deal?
Well, there is a whole story that, I have this whistleblower called Cameron Faley, and he is from the Kurdish line, and he and his family consult in the city of London and are experts in the banking system.
Wow.
So he suddenly has started having these, I don't know what you would call it, but these views of Nibiru and this theory about the coming of Nibiru and all this. And he completely kind of like changed his life, started writing books about it, and eventually I had him on my show. Okay. But he knew, like the Arab peoples know, about this coming of the Mahdi. I call it the Mahdi. They call it the Mahdi, or whatever they call it.
Yeah. The Mahdi, so, I know.
But it's their Jesus figure kind of person.
Right.
That's supposed to bring peace to the area. Okay.
Right.
And that's what right now, the Israelis bombed the Iranian consulate. That was a clear act of war. They wanted war. Okay. That's what they want. They want war. Right. And I got, this is not an accident. This is not even tit for tat, but they are planning to try to bring the destruction of the Dome of the Rock and then the building of the new temple and the whole 9 yards. I mean, they're trying. One of the things about the Anunnaki, and they're still alive, and actually I've got stories about that in Israel.
Yeah,
about them walking around, a journalist.
I'm not surprised.
Did you ever hear about Barry Sho-Mesh? Did you ever? He
that
died.
Sounds familiar. Yeah,
he's a famous Israeli journalist
Yeah.
who wasn't into this field whatsoever, just a regular journalist.
Yeah.
But they started getting stories about women in their homes in the afternoon in Israel. Forget if it was Jerusalem or not, but anyway, these big tall beings started coming and visiting their houses and just walking inside their houses as if they owned them, kicking their dogs out the way, and basically walking around, just looking around and then leaving. And they had multiple of these things going on, so he decided to investigate. So he did, and basically he popularized and mentioned the story and so on and so forth. But I had, sort of psychic information come to me about the Anunnaki in Israel, and being underground and also involved in Dimona and all of this. So the Israelis are, whether they like it or not, are run by the Anunnaki. And I even had proof of this in this very interesting whistleblower called Major Solomon Berg, who came forward and was with a Yeti that we call they called Bigfoot. Sasquatch, who was did you hear about the story?
No.
Okay, that the Air Force kidnapped, or whatever you want to call it, and got this one being, this Sasquatch, in the Pacific Northwest. And this particular scientist, it was a very interpreter of animal languages, and he was also I guess telepathic, so he could communicate with cats and various things. So they brought him in to communicate with this Sasquatch, and he developed a telepathic relationship with him. And it's a whole big story, and I've done 3 interviews with him, and then he disappeared.
Wow.
But the thing is that what happened part way through was that he started telling me that they took the Sasquatch and they left America, he and his team, and they brought the Sasquatch underground in Egypt. I mean in Israel. What? And they built a complex under there with looked like nature and all that kind of thing. And the 2 of them had lived in there because the Americans were trying to do too many experiments on the Sasquatch, and they didn't. So then what happened was the Sasquatch, came under the notice of the Anunnaki who are running Israel, and came forward with the information that, going back in history, these Sasquatch kind of Yeti beings, who are spacefaring race, they're not from here. They are big arch enemy is the Anunnaki.
Oh, good Lord.
And so then they had to leave Israel because the Sasquatch was no longer comfortable being under that command. So they went back to America, and the saga continues. It actually sounds like a movie. Yeah. And there's some guys on the internet, they're trying to pretend that the whole thing is a lie now. And they're, and they've even got some, supposedly Solomon Berg might have died. Then supposedly he showed up and said it was all a lie. But it doesn't matter, because when you have whistleblowers, that at some point, if the people get to them close enough, and get them scared enough, they will deny everything. And that's what they do. So that's very common, and that didn't change my mind whatsoever. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing it up is because the Anunnaki are very involved with Israel and with what decisions Israel makes. And so these decisions, like they knew about October 7th for a full year, they have planning, and they have AI, and they have, they even came forward 6 months before and had one of their top technical technicians, whatever, say that they were king of AI. That's what they said in a newspaper article. Wow. I have it.
Wow.
So how insane to come forward and boast about that, and then 6 months later pretend like you didn't know something, right?
Right.
So this is what we're living in. We're living in a plan. It's a plan, and they are rolling it out. That's for sure.
Yep. So in the book that I provide, if you read there's a couple different pages. I'll send you the link. It's the
Okay.
book
Yeah.
on my Substack. It's called The Shining Ones,
Okay.
and it's by Christian O'Brien. He's deceased now, and it's to me it's light years beyond what Sitchin wrote. But
Okay.
the point is, it says in there that Yahweh, Jehovah, was definitely an Anunnaki who had kind of gone off the rails and was.
Yeah, to say the
But
least.
once that particular Anunnaki and his cabal, his mafia, had trained this group of mercenaries to do their bidding, his bidding, he was the original Jehovah was pulled out of the picture, or for whatever reason he's gone. So they put another Anunnaki in his place, supposedly who's more benevolent. But to me, that sounds like good cop, bad cop.
Right.
So it's kind of a long read, but if you jumped ahead to that portion, I'll find the page for you. It's really weird because nobody wants to talk about this.
Yeah.
They just don't want to talk about it.
No, and the rabbis, I'm sorry to say, they are misleading people like rabidly.
Mhm.
So I'm very annoyed with them, and I really want the truth to come out about all of this, because the lies are just rampant.
Yeah,
And one of the things is to do with what they teach, behind the scenes. Also, you may know
yeah,
about
yeah.
this.
But
To
right.
Israelis, they teach them that they're the superior race and all this crazy shit.
Well, that goes back to what they were taught.
Yeah.
Okay, by these so-called Anunnaki gods,
Mhm.
angels. They're fallen angels. Okay, this is again why I said what part of my path was to understand angelology, not to judge it, but just to look at it as a repository of information that has been hidden from us about these beings. They really don't, just like the Book of Enoch. In fact, what we have now is probably not the original one. And more importantly, just like Thoth, Enoch was probably the same guy. Supposedly wrote hundreds of books. And where did he get the information? He was literally copying books that the Anunnaki had showed him,
Mhm.
according to the book, The Shining Ones. It's just, it's like somebody took a pot. If our history was a big pot and they just threw it on the ground and boom, it shattered into 1,000 pieces. And it's a huge chore to try to pull them all together and trying to make sense of it all. It's just, it's a crime. It's really a crime, in my opinion.
Right. Now, I'm going to let you go. We're going to close this down, but I
Okay.
want to say one thing.
Yeah.
Does it ever occur to you, what the reason they were watching you from the very beginning and very early on, aside from even your contact or semi-contact experiences or whatnot, or
Yeah.
bloodline, is that one of the things they do, and they've been doing this for a long time, they actually track when they are interested in somebody, they then figure out what they're going to do in the future.
Yeah.
And then they work to prevent it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that could also be what's going on.
Yeah, no, that was told to us actually when we first started. When I met my wife, she started the magazine. I'm working with her. She introduced me to this guy, the German Aldebaran kind of guy. He said, "Yeah, we're reading your thoughts from space or whatever, and we know what's going to happen. And there's a plan to basically nuke Los Angeles, but we're going to prevent it." He says, "But we also know in the future that two of you in this room," and he wouldn't say who, but he said, two of you in this room are going to be very influential in the future in a good way.
Mm.
And like I was having a very hard time with all of this stuff, but it turned out it was my wife and I.
Yeah.
And I nobody would have guessed it because my life was not, I wasn't doing well, and I was very confused about what I was going to do with myself, or
Mm.
more importantly, why am I so obsessed with this information, and what am I supposed to do with it? And ultimately the door opened, I went through it, and here we are. But I know it's not over yet, but I'm also trying to be very cautious about the way I provide information publicly, because this is no joke. Okay, they're very okay. Criminals don't like to be exposed or opposed publicly. They just don't. And this is an organized crime syndicate here on this world and off this world. So
Yes.
for some little guy like me to come out, or even a person like yourself with a much bigger production value, they don't like it. And they do try to stop us. They
Yeah.
do. Doesn't always work.
No, but it is part of the game. They definitely do mess with you constantly. I mean, my website's been taken down so many times I can't count now.
Wow.
But aside from that, I've had I mean, we got, even in the early days of Camelot, when I was only had a partner for 2.5 of the 20 years I've been doing this, but
Yeah.
we got constant flat tires, constant
Wow.
things happening to our car, constant things, going on. So they were messing with us from the very
Yeah.
beginning. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
At one point, we were driving in Switzerland up in the Alps in this old Audi station wagon car that had been checked out thoroughly in England. And we were going up this incredibly windy, steep road. We got up to the top where there's this little, I don't know if it's Grindelwald or what it was called, but anyway, it's this little Swiss city in the top of the mountain. And we drove into a parking lot, and one of the wheels just fell off the car. And we brought it to the garage, and he said it was cut. It was just cut perfectly.
What?
So, yeah. So had it fallen off while we were going up the windy road, I might not be here today, because we would go off a cliff,
Yeah, more than likely. Wow.
There were big cliffs, not little ones. So
yeah, right. No kidding. No kidding.
No, there's all kind of things like that,
I know.
And
wow.
But I think we also, on the other hand, have, you want to call them angels, or we have people looking out for us, both on this planet and off the planet.
Yeah, I know, but you don't want to abuse that privilege. I don't take it for granted. It's like, I'm not going to go swim in shark infested waters, go, hey, protect me.
No, I try to be, careful, but there's no doubt whatsoever that this is going on the way it is, and that we are getting in a more heightened state now on the planet. It seems that it's not just an illusion that it's that way.
Well, the energy is picking up because the planet, our solar system, I mean, you must have heard about this, the photon belt, that we've literally moved. It's always happening, but as we orbit around the galaxy, our planet kind of does this number like a merry-go-round.
Yeah.
And so when it hits that midpoint, it's in a much more energized, there's more light and energy right there. And we've transited, or we're transiting through it. NASA says it's going to take a few hundred years. The people in India know about it. It's part of their Vedic lore. They understand that it's not astrology. We're talking about space weather. And obviously the consciousness is energy. So when there's more energy coming through, it's going to break down the barriers and increase that level of, it's not wisdom, but it's just consciousness in general is going to flow a lot better, or more of it is flowing through us at this point.
Yeah, that in a sense, the force is with us in terms of revealing truth.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. That's my upcoming. Okay. Look, I've never written a memoir, but yeah, I did I show you that? Anyway. Yeah. So when I was in Hong Kong, people started calling me Jedi Master. And I actually was given a full costume and a lightsaber and all that stuff. It's a long story, but the bottom line is I realized, wait a minute, there's some truth to that. They wouldn't be just calling me that for a gag, although it was funny. I realized that this was sort of like, hey, don't you remember? There's this group, and no, we don't call ourselves Jedi, but in Egypt they did. That was part of an initiation. Raising the Jed pillar literally was a Kundalini awakening, much like what happened to me in the Great Pyramid there. So anyway, just bottom line, since you brought it up, yeah, Jedi Order is real, but it's been fictionalized like everything else by Hollywood, so that people think, oh, that's not real.
Yeah,
they're good at that.
But on the other hand, they realize that on a subliminal level, they realize they're being told truth. That's
predictive programming, sort of. Yeah, that whole thing too.
So it still has a purpose, because otherwise they'd forget about it completely. And so at least they're kids run around thinking they want to have lightsabers, and they want to be on the good side, and they want to fight.
Yeah, but the Jedi Order, right? I'll just tell you straight out. It's originally called the Melchizedek Order, and that just means King of Righteousness. And no, they don't go around chopping people up with swords. It's about defending divinity throughout all of creation. especially against the dark side, which is, you know, destructive, evil, whatever you want to call it. That dissonant, actually, I like the word dissonance because it's the opposite of resonance, and that's what they do, you know, and that's what we do. You know, we don't need a weapon. We are the weapon. We carry that resonant energy with us wherever we go, whatever we do. And if they don't like it, that's too bad.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
anyway, it's been a
Thank
lot
you.
of fun talking to
Yeah.
you. And I hope you'll come back on my show sometime in the future when you feel like you want to say something.
Well,
And you know, I'm happy to, you know, get all your links so we can put them on the page with the show so that people
okay.
can visit you and read your books
Thank you, Carrie.
and so on.
Appreciate that very much. I'm glad you're well.
Oh, thank you.
Stay that way.
Yeah, thank you. All right. I'm glad you're well.
Thanks.
All right, everyone, thank you for watching, and we'll be back with another show in the future. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.